Hi, everybody. Welcome to Busy Living So Bomb. Busy Living So Bomb. Busy Living Sober.
Hi.
It's episode 220. 220. Woo! 220. 220. Woo! And we're talking about steps 8 and 9.
You did that well.
I'm going to read the steps. Okay, 8. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Made a list. That's what you do with number 8.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about 8 first. I'm not even going to read 9 yet.
Okay.
We're going to do it one at a time. That's how we roll here at Busy Living Sober.
Gotcha.
What do you think about step 8?
Well, since you read it out of the big book, when you actually get to step 8 in the big book, it says you already made this list when you did your 4th step. So you already have the list. So that's pretty simple. So you don't have to write one. And and then it's sort of, it seems to like sort of assume that you'd be willing to make amends to them all. If you read the 12 and 12, the 12 steps and 12 traditions, it has a lot more than one sentence on step 8. It has an entire chapter on step 8. And it really talks a lot about the list. And it talks about, in there, it talks about people having sort of breaking their list up into 3 different parts. The one part is people I'm willing to make amends to. The other part is people I might make amends to someday. And the last part is people I'll never make amends to no matter what. And it seems to use that as a way to get people started, instead of like the big book thing where you have to be ready to make amends to all of them, or you can't even go on to step 9. So you can at least get rolling with it. And then it goes on to say that once you start going through this process of step 9, you'll revisit your 3 different sub lists in your list, and eventually everybody will be on the list of people that you want to make amends to. So that's my understanding of step 8 in the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous.
But what was it like for you?
Well, what it was like for me with my first sponsor was we had the list and we looked at it and we talked about it. And honestly, I was on step 8 for a little while because I had to be willing to make amends to every single person on that list before I could get started. Just like it does in the big book. That was
your first sponsor.
That was my first sponsor. So
how did that go over?
Well, it went over well because then I got to procrastinate for quite a while.
How many years?
How many years of procrastination?
Yeah.
I think it wasn't years. It was probably 3 months.
Okay.
Before I finally was like, okay, I need to get going forward. And, so that was my experience the first time around with that list. And since I did it that way the first time around, I've done the steps a few more times, but it's just never been an issue because I've never had a list of people I'm like, yes, they're on my list. No, I will never make amends to them.
Really?
Right. And you might ask why.
Well, I'm sitting here, and if you're watching us on YouTube, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what type of person would be on your list, do you think, if you were to think that you didn't have this, but if you were to have that, what type of person would be on your amends list?
What type of person?
No, what type of person would be on the list, do you think, would be someone that you wouldn't want to make amends to?
I can tell you that, some of the people I got hung up with were.
You don't have to tell us the exact name.
I'm not giving any names.
Okay.
Because we're not allowed to do that. It's anonymous.
Right. So he can't tell you who it is, but right. You can give us a little.
But it was, a few people that I was like convinced that whatever I did to them, they did something way worse to me. And that if anybody's owed an amends, it should be me. And my part in it was small and their part in it was big and all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of person that would be on that list.
And you didn't have anybody on that list?
Well, I had to get past that point because I wasn't allowed to have that list the first time around. I had to be willing to make amends to them all before I could make amends to any of them. You said.
Now, what just being willing is like the big thing. If there's a lot of willingness in these steps, isn't there? There's a lot. It's from the very beginning. It
Right,
says
and that's it,
willing,
and it
willing,
doesn't-
willing,
Right.
willing.
So here's the thing about step 8 that people always get confused about. All I have to do in step 8 is be willing. I don't have to do anything else. Like, because the rest of it is step 9. It's a whole different step.
Okay, so let's keep talking about being willing.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about another podcast a lot.
Sure. Willing's a great word.
It is a great word. I always like to I don't know if I've done this. I don't think I looked it up last time, but I think it's a good thing to do. It's always fun to
Okay, you look that up, and then I'll give you my spiel when you're done.
Okay, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look up the word willing,
Mhm.
and we'll look up willing. Willingness, the quality or state of being prepared to do something. Readiness, the ability and willingness of workers to migrate.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have, I'm trying to find, here's Merriam-Webster. Synonyms, antonyms, willingness is having a desire to willingness is, what did I just say?
There was no desire in there.
There was no desire, it was just willingness.
It was just being ready to do something.
It's
That's all.
the quality of state of being prepared to do something. So in the madness, it said, so willingness. So does that mean that you're prepared for, let's say, a tsunami, or you're prepared for, let's say, a hurricane? That's willingness.
That's preparedness.
Okay.
Okay. Willingness is that you're prepared or ready to do something. You know, you're not going to do a tsunami. You're not going to do a hurricane, right? You're going to do something. And the thing about it is that you just have to be prepared to do it. You don't have to want to do it. You don't have to like to do it. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to do it. You have to be prepared to do it. That's all, whether you like to do it or
Does
not.
that mean, so you have to be willing to get prepared if there's a hurricane coming your way?
Okay, you're really under the hurricane thing. You're really, I think you're bringing up a different
All right, I'm
something,
just, okay.
because it's not about being prepared. Okay, it's not about like,
But when you're,
it's not about loading up the house with food. It's about just being ready to do something. Okay, so I have to be willing to get out of bed when my alarm clock goes off, whether I want to or not. Right? I don't want to get up. I'm tired, but guess what? The alarm clock went off. I got to get out. Okay. And then I come downstairs and I'm like, I don't feel like taking the trash out, but it has to go out. So I'm going to take it out. Trash is my favorite thing. You know that.
mine is hurricane.
Because trash does not take itself out. You know, so it doesn't
Do you
matter.
like trash?
I really don't. But my point is, I don't have to want to do it. I don't have to like doing it. It's just something that I have to be ready to do. That's it. You know, so that's all there is to it. I just have to say, you know what? I don't like that person. I wish I didn't have to talk to them. I don't want to talk to them. I'd rather do anything in the world to talk to them, but I'll talk to them. I'm willing to do it. That's it.
It's hard to get that willing, isn't it?
Well,
You have to be brought to your knees to want to be willing to change, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's all part of it. So you just have to be, and that's what the real learning lesson was, you know, we're not saying go out and do it. We're just saying, yes, I'll do it. Whether I want to or not, doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it.
You just have to be willing,
That's it. That's all there is to it.
just willing.
You don't have to overthink it. Just be willing.
So that's step 8 for you.
That's it. You already made the list according to the big book.
So, but what happens if you were told to like burn your list after you write it out?
Well, that sponsor probably should have read ahead a couple steps first before they told you to do that.
Well, do you think you could make another list of the people that were on there and then burn the rest of your 5th step and then just keep the list on a separate piece of paper?
Sure, you can do whatever you want.
I think that might be nice.
You do whatever your sponsor tells you to do.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Do whatever your sponsor tells you to do and just write a list coming down of all the people. How many people were on your list?
First time around, It's been so long, I don't remember, but I would say probably 40.
40.
Right.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. It seemed like a lot. But then I did it another time with another sponsor, and the list had to have every person that I ever met in my life on it. That was a long list. And I had to be willing to make amends to them all. Like most of them, don't even remember them, and I'll never see them again. But if I do, and here's this is a true story. Okay.
If I do, I love the story
because I'm willing to do it. If the opportunity arises, I'll do it. So for instance, I was in my house.
Okay, wait. I want to back up because now we're talking about 9, right?
Right.
So we haven't gotten to 9. Okay, so wait a minute. We're going to switch over now.
We can go back and forth a little bit.
We'll go back and forth, but let's just go because now we're going to 9 just because here's a story for 9. So I'm going to read to you step 9 now.
It's a little longer. Oh, wait, you're just doing the short version.
Made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so which injure them or others. So that's step 9.
Right.
Okay, so here you are. You have your list and you're willing to make amends and you're going to go make an amends to somebody.
So this is my story. This is how it worked out. So I have this list of everybody I've ever met in my life.
So 40 people long.
No, this is the other story. This is the story of everyone I've ever met in my life.
Okay.
Which is like, I think I had well over 1,200 names on there of that I could remember of people that I met.
Oh my God.
And I had to be willing to make amends to them all. And that was fine. So I was willing to do it. So I'm in my house and I'm minding my own business and I'm having a problem with my DirecTV. So
DirecTV. It all comes back to TV.
So I called DirecTV.
Was there a hurricane coming that you needed to watch TV?
Exactly.
I had to throw my hurricane in.
So I called DirecTV and they send a DirecTV repairman out. And this man walks into my house and he says, "Are you JF?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'm so-and-so. Do you remember me? We used to work together at such and such a place." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I do remember you." And I just have to tell you that I'm really sorry about the way I treated you when we worked together. And, I've changed. I'm sober now and I'm a different person. I really am. But I really am sorry about the way I treated you. It was not nice. And I sincerely hope you'll accept that from me. And he said, "Oh, you weren't that bad. You were okay. You were fine." But that was the willingness to be able to do what I had to do. So when I saw who this guy was and realized that he was one of the 1,200 names on my list, I had to make an amends with the guy. And I did. And he fixed my DirecTV. I never had a problem with it again. It was very nice.
And isn't that interesting? So it wasn't as scary.
Well, no, because I was willing to do it. So it was fine. So the opportunity presented itself. I never would have tracked this guy down on my own. That was never the idea behind the 1,200 names on the list, was to go out.
What was the idea, do you think? What do you think the idea of that was?
It was a method of going through the big book and doing the steps, which I wanted to try to see what it was like. And I probably wouldn't do it again. And I probably wouldn't recommend it to anybody because it was just a little too rote for me. But what the theory behind it was that since you're an alcoholic, anyone you ever met in your life, from the second you were born, you have a resentment towards, and they have to be on your resentment list. That was their theory. Now, it did turn out that, I had not been nice to this person when we worked together. And so I was glad I had the opportunity to, make the amends.
I guess, do you think that if you hadn't put that person down on the list, it would have even occurred to you when they came in the house? Would you even?
I don't even know if they were on the list, because the point was that I just had to be willing to make amends to anybody, and the opportunity presented itself. So I took that opportunity.
But you said you wouldn't do it again.
I wouldn't do that method again, but just because it's kind of crazy to think that people that I met when I was 6 months old, I have a resentment towards. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I like the idea as, as a person who's trying to be in recovery, that I'll be willing to make amends to anybody that I owe an amends to, is really what it comes down to. That's the real thing, whether they're on the list or not. Because let's face it, I mean, I was a blackout drinker, right? So there's a lot of people that I don't remember. Like, they might remember me, I don't remember them. And but I'm sure that I probably owe that person an amends. I mean, I'm sure I do. So if that opportunity arises where I bump into somebody that says, "Hey, remember me?" and I don't, I still gives me the opportunity to.
It's interesting. So I've done amends, and I've done amends with people. Some people don't want to hear them. They're just like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. It's all good. Like lots of people are like that. I had a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's okay. I totally got over it. One person was like, I don't even remember what you're talking about. I was like, really? I've been carrying around thinking that you were mad at me for this entire time. And the person was like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, but I was willing to do it. And I really was excited to do it. And when the people aren't as excited to receive it as you are to give it, it's like, it can be a bummer a little bit.
Yeah, that's if you have an
It's
expectation.
definitely is a deflation of your ego. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, I've been carrying this around for this long and you don't even remember. And I remember it explicitly. And I too was a blackout drinker. So there was a lot of stuff I don't remember, a lot of stuff I could not, like if you asked me to go, I don't remember when I was 6 months old. I barely remember when I was 6 years old. And to think back to all the people I'd met, and I don't even know if it would be 200 people that I could remember, even though I had been around. I don't know. There would probably be a lot of people. I'd have to like bring out, did you bring out resources to look? Did you like get out you didn't? See, like you have to say the word because some people are only listening to this.
No, I did not. I did it by the way that you did this was you're supposed to take an hour a day and write names down. And you're supposed to do it for, I forget what it was, 7 days or 10 days, some time limit, and just remember names. And it's amazing how many names you can actually remember when you start thinking about it, which is funny because I can't even remember somebody's name now 5 minutes after I meet them. It's terrible.
I mean, this is serious. It's just, and I know some people that are so excited when they get sober. I was so excited to tell everybody I was sober, and I was sorry. There's a lot of people who think that too. I just have to get out there and say, I'm sorry. But really, excuse me, everybody. Excuse me. I didn't sleep well last night, so I have a little bit of a yawn. So excuse me. A lot of people are excited for this step from the very beginning. Like it's the number one thing you want to do is you want to run out and say you're sorry. And I think there's something to be said for that.
There is. And, my own experience with most people I've ever made amends to was like, forget about somebody that was number 944 on that list, but the people that were closer to me, for the most part were like, I'd get started and they'd say, thank God you're not drinking anymore. Good for you. I'm proud of you and I'm happy for you. And, that stuff you did, it wasn't great, but it's okay. You're okay. I forgive you and it's fine. And I think that the reason why what I believe anyway, is the reason why we don't start making amends and apologizing right away as soon as we come in when we really want to, is that I guarantee you there were people in my life that I had apologized to over and over again for doing the same thing, for a long time, some people I worked with, some people I was related to. And if I had been sober for a week or 10 days and said, guess what? I'm sober now. you know, and I'm sorry about all that shit I did. To be like, you know what, fuck you, because
This is a curse word one. Sorry, excuse our cursing.
sorry about that. But they'd be like, I don't, you know, you're full of it. You've apologized before. You always do the same thing. You're gonna just do it again. Blah blah blah. But it's a little bit different when I come to them and I have a little bit of time behind me and say, you know, I've been sober now for 6 months or 9 months or whatever it is, and the change is actually apparent in me, you know, that I am different and my demeanor has changed, and they're more receptive to being like, okay, maybe this time he really means it when he says that he's different, because the last 44 times he didn't mean it.
What do you think about making amends to yourself?
Well, that's always been supposedly the first person on the list, right? They always say you got to put yourself in there. You're supposed to be the first person on the list. And I believe that that's a great idea. But I also believe that's a real process. You know, that's not like, oh, okay, I'm on the list, so let me sit down with myself next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And, you know, I'm going to make an amends to myself and that'll be fine. Because, you know, it just doesn't really work that way. I think that's a process that takes some time. You know, it takes some time to be able to forgive yourself for a lot of the stuff that happened. And, you know, it takes a lot of humility and takes a lot of faith to be able to get there. So I don't think that happens like this. I think it's a great idea. You have to be on your list, but you have to be patient with yourself too.
It's hard.
Well, sure it is.
It's really hard. It's really hard to make amends to yourself.
Yeah, because the problem with yourself is like, you're always there. And wherever you go, there you are. It's like, I can't get away from this guy. It's me. You know?
It is. It's the hardest one. And it's the one that I feel like if you have a higher power, which we both do, and so you have this relationship with God and God forgave you. And I talk about this a lot in my meetings in the morning. But it's like, God forgave me, but where do I get off? Not like I'm going to trump God in how
Right.
holding this resentment and holding this grudge towards myself.
That's why I say it takes really.
Oh, it takes a long time. It takes a long time. I mean, I'm sitting here at 14 years and it's something I'm working on all the time. It's having this forgiveness and this love for myself, which is very difficult. It's hard sometimes because that old tape still plays in your head after, I mean, I can say that after 14 years of continuous sobriety, that can still, you know, rear its ugly head. It's like, I'm not good enough. Oh, no wonder you don't like me. Oh my gosh, this person's talking about just like the craziness that we goes through our head. And even with many like decades.
It's a process. And I can tell you, for somebody who's known you 8 of your 14 years of sobriety, that you're, you know, much more comfortable with yourself person, way more comfortable self with your person with your now than you were 8 years ago. I mean, it's night and day. And that's really what it comes down to, I think.
It does. It takes so much time, and it takes humility, and it takes willingness, that willingness to go, you know what, God forgave me. Now I have to forgive myself, and I'm going to be willing to do that today. And maybe I'm just going to do it for a minute, and then I'm going to do it for another minute, and then I'm going to do it for another minute, and then I'm going to do it for another minute. I think that's where it all comes down to, is like, I can only do this 1 minute at a time. One day at a time. And I think that writing for me and doing the gratitude thing, and I'm not going to talk about 10 yet because we're not there yet. That's next week, which is a really great step. I can't wait to talk about step 10 next week. But step 9 in making these amends and making amends to other people, but making sure you make amends to yourself and really figuring out what you're making the amends for is really important. I think, like, really forgiving yourself for being an alcoholic. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be an alcoholic. I think it comes down, you could have a million people in your family that don't have alcoholism. You could actually come from a family that doesn't have alcoholics. So you don't know where to find where you can find it. So it's not genetic. So you can't pointed out is, oh, this is something that happened genetically for me, where you and I can both do that. We know where we got it. But if you don't know where that is, it's still having the humility to go, I am an alcoholic, and every time I drink, I get drunk, or every time I have something happen, there's always drinking involved. And I think that doing that is that's like a launching point, is realizing like that's why I have it. I think when we look and we keep searching and searching for why, it's just, I think that becomes a sphere or something in your life. It just becomes a derailer if you constantly have to go search for the whys instead of going, it just is, and this is who I am, and I'm going to love myself, all my bumps and warts and whatever that we all have, because we all have wrinkles, we all have different things in our lives, we have scars, we have and the scars that seem like they're on the outside don't hurt as much as the ones that are on the inside. But realizing that all of that happened for a reason, and I have to forgive myself for whatever reason that was, and I have to really make amends to myself. And doing that, I think, is like by writing a gratitude list to yourself, pointing out the good things that are in your life. I actually am working a 4-step with a sponsee, and it's like you have to put down what the positives are about you as well as the negatives. And I think that that's really imperative to put down, to be able to see on paper, you know what, I'm not such a bad person. Because if we don't do that, I don't think we can ever be free. Like, we can let other people, family members, everything else know that you're, you said you were sorry and you're moving on. But until you really say you're sorry to yourself and accept where you are, and I don't think you can move forward.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. A lot of people get stuck there.
And it can take decades. It can take years. And I think that it's important that we point out that it might not happen overnight. Don't give up till the miracle happens, and really take the time, if you can, to just say, and I know it's crazy, but like mirror work really works for me. And Louise Hay was this woman that I think invented it or founded, or at least she named it mirror work, where you put post-it notes in your house and around wherever you live, and you say, I am enough, and I love myself, and it's all okay. Like, I mean, I love Elizabeth is a big thing that I had to write around my house for a long time, because I had these voices in my head that said, no, I wasn't good enough. No, I wasn't this. No, I wasn't that. And, which kept me in that sense of like self-pity, just yuckiness.
Yeah, I think that, for me, I think like a lot of people early on, I read a lot of books about alcoholism, and I wanted to find out like more about it. And so it's fine. I did it. But, what I really learned and where I really got it from was, it's probably why like the 9th step is where it is, back in steps 2 and step 3 was finding a higher power, and which, as you always say, I like to call God, and believing that it's God's world, and that I need to have enough humility to understand that God made me, and that takes a while, right? Because I like to take credit for everything, good or bad, but God made me, and He made me just the way I am, and that's, I accept that. Like, I'm okay that I don't have to ask, I don't have to wonder about it anymore. It's just, like, it is what it is. I am what I am. God made me, and and God loves me, and I'm good enough for Him. I mean, He made me, so I have to be good enough for myself. Or then I'm, like you said, I'm trying to say, I know more than God does. And the funny thing, I mean, the way I believe anyway, is like, God knew everything that I was going to do, and He knows everything I'm going to do in my life already. Like, as soon as He made me, He knew everything that I was going to do, and He forgave me for it. So I should be able to do that, right? So God made me an alcoholic, and I did a lot of things under the influence that, caused me a lot of trouble, caused me a lot of pain. But then I wasn't under the influence anymore. I haven't been for a long time, and I don't do those things anymore. And I've come to understand that, like the real JF is not JF under the influence. That's not, it's like those things that I did are not things that I would do. I just wouldn't do those. And so it's not that I get a pass per se, but I've been able to like understand that I was suffering from a disease, and that because of that, I did things that I wish I hadn't. And it's funny, I was just working with a guy this morning and we were talking about alcoholism and we related it to diabetes. And I said, the thing about diabetes is, if you have diabetes, you have to treat it every day, right? And it doesn't matter what treatment you do, you're always going to have diabetes. You'll have it right up until you die. It's never going to go away, but you can live with it just fine, and people do, you don't even know they have diabetes. I'm sure there's plenty of people that know me that have no idea that I have a drinking, or that I have a drinking problem. They just don't know because they've never seen me drink. And God willing, they never will. And I said, nobody sits around and talks about like, can you believe so-and-so that they have, they eat donuts all the time and they have diabetes? Like, what's the matter with them? Like, people don't do that, because they just accept that diabetes is a disease and it's a terrible disease and they wish you the best, but you don't get the same break when you have addiction from a lot of people, because they see that as a lack of willpower or whatever it is. And that's what causes, for me anyway, I believe that's what causes so much of the pain, because I buy into that, right? I say, well, if I hadn't drank so much, if I could have had a little more self-control, and I completely forget that I have no self-control, none at all. And, constant reading for me of the doctor's opinion for a long time broke me of that and made me understand, like, I just had a disease and I was doing what sick people do. And I don't do that anymore. And I haven't done any of that for a long time. And God made me for some reason the way he did. So who am I to complain? Right?
Right. So you accepted yourself for who you were.
Exactly.
And that's the key.
But it didn't happen overnight, like you said.
Yeah.
It was a process. That's why I say making amends to yourself is a process. I wish I could have made that appointment next Tuesday at 10.
It would have been a lot easier. It would have been a lot easier.
Uh-huh.
Well, if you're out there and you're thinking about this or pondering this, and give yourself a break, treat yourself with kid gloves, meaning very nicely. And it's the freedom you get from doing these 2 steps, I have to say, is really amazing.
Oh yeah, I just want to interject one thing. It's like that, when you get there, don't hesitate, because the beauty of it is that you get so much freedom from it, mostly because there's these people, at least there were for me anyway, people in my life that I was like, I'm so embarrassed and appalled about what I did. I don't ever want to see that person again, but they live in my town, so what do I have to do? Like, oh my God, I'm in the store, there they are, like, I got to get out of here. But the way that I can not have to do that anymore is make the amends. And then I don't have to cross the street when I see them coming, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And once you make the amends, all that stuff's gone, all that darkness is gone. No matter how they take it, doesn't really matter, because it's out in the open and it's okay. And you can.
It's not as scary as you thought it was going to be. No. We sure project scary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for doing these steps up to step 9 with me.
Sure. Thanks for staying awake for this one.
I know, it's crazy. I haven't been sleeping well. But anyway, enough of that. So if you're out there and you're battling addiction, for one, know that you're not alone. And we are just going over these 12 steps just because we thought that we might help somebody. And if you don't use the 12 steps, that's okay. But we are not trying to overstep anybody's boundaries here. We're just giving you guys our opinions. These are just the opinions of JF and myself. These are not to be written in stone or anything, and it's what's worked for us. And if you can take one word or one thing to just help you get one more day of sobriety, that's all we really care about, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
We love everybody, right?
We love everybody. Not all the time, but sometimes.
We always love them.
We always love them.
We just don't always like them.
That's true.
Mhm.
That's true. Well, anyway, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in or for listening. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, you can subscribe to me on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or just go to my website at busylivingsober.com.
Cool. Busy living. I didn't know you had a website.
busylivingsober.com.
I'm gonna have to go see it sometime.
I think you could come see it. There's information because I do host a meeting. If anybody's interested in trying out a 12-step meeting, I do host a Zoom one every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that information is on my website under Morning Hope. Just I've never talked about that, but there, because we're talking about the steps, I thought I might as well talk about it.
Sure.
And please know, again, you're not alone. Reach out with questions or comments to Bizzy, B-I-Z-Z-Y, at busylivingsober.com. That's B-I-Z-Z-Y at B-U-S-Y livingsober.com. And until next time, keep getting busy, living
Sober.
sober. Got it. Yay. Thanks, honey. Okay, everybody, until next time, keep getting busy, living sober. Bye-bye.